All right, Fungo Banner fans, we are beyond excited. This is our last episode of the season before we all head to the Diamond. Actually, we're all already on the Diamond by the time this airs, but we're ending this thing when this season 5, I believe it is, with a bang, as we are joined by Coach Kim Cox and JC Biagi, uh, Walla Walla legends. Is that how I should introduce you guys?
Yeah,
DeSales High School, and
Coach
so much,
Cox
so
for
much
sure.
more. Well, thank you for getting on the Fungal Banner podcast with us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We are so excited. And right away, we can go. JC, you want to go first? What's your favorite fungo?
Sure. Yeah, I started off honestly with this old like heavy-handled Hoosier, and I quickly abandoned it. My college coach used this really big Hoosier. I don't even know if they make them anymore, but I quickly switched to a D-bat.
Oh, yeah.
Couldn't tell you the model number, but it's a super thin, lightning fast, hit missiles. And I tried to keep that thing together for 10 years and finally started to flake, so I had to get out of baseball. Yeah.
Coach Cox?
I'd have to go with the old Easton metal bat way back in the late '80s. Those things were a lot of fun. They had a lot of pop in them.
Oh man, we have one of those in our dugout in the shade.
Do you really?
Well, it was purchased as a joke because an assistant coached me for a long time. He we use it now, man. We had assistant coach, and I'll shout him out, Ryan Hastings. He was a pitcher in college, and he always broke fungos for us. And I got tired of it because he broke one of mine, so I finally bought him a metal one so he wouldn't break anymore. That's why it sits and it stays there in the Hastings spot. But we bring it out because we like to hit the ground balls that we play with aluminum bats. There's something to be said about that.
Yeah.
So walk us through your path in baseball. Where you grew up playing baseball and what got you into coaching, and then your path through coaching that lead you where you are today. Who wants to start? We'll go, Coach Cox.
Well, I think my interest in coaching began when I was about 17 years old, right after my junior year of high school, and I'd had an accident and almost lost my thumb, my right thumb, and so I couldn't play baseball that summer. And my older brother Shane had decided to coach like a little league age team. And so he said, "Well, you can't play. You might as well help me." And so I started helping him, and just immediately got the coaching bug.
So when you got into coach, you coached little league, and then what got you into coaching at DeSales High School and your path to get to DeSales?
Well, I coached after little league. I only did that for like 1 year, and just wanted to coach some older kids. And so back then, they had pony league and colt league and all of those. And so I coached a pony league team of 13 and 14-year-olds. So I did that for a couple summers, and then coached a colt league team. And about that time, I was getting through college and stuff, and came back and became the head coach at DeSales in 1983. And was always involved doing some sort of summer baseball too, whether it's Colt League, and then they had other names, Senior Babe Ruth or whatever, different organizations. Was always coaching around here in Walla Walla though. Then later on, we started running our own summer team at DeSales, and so almost every year we went through spring, went through summer, and then I coached football too. So it was pretty busy, several months there. But really enjoyed the coaching, especially during the summer. Really liked that a lot.
Well, JC, talk us through your path through baseball.
Yeah, it went right through Coach Cox. No, truly, I would say this if I wasn't here right now with him talking about this, but I started off like probably any other kid, really young in baseball, And I happened to have a dad and a couple of uncles who were really, both big fans, but also had kind of a little bit of a history, playing. And anyway, it was, I don't know, probably when I was 11, I think I was. And I had quit Little League. I was one of those one at bat, one inning in the field Little Leaguers. I was scared of getting hit by a pitch and T-ball, kind of thing. And my dad was fishing professionally at the time, and it happened that Coach Cox was also coaching my uncle Donnie at DeSales. This would have been around 1992, and it was probably sometime in the spring prior to a state championship run. And I was kind of in this nomad's land with baseball, and Dad brought me down to work with Coach Cox, and it kind of turned out to this kind of a trade for a fishing trip kind of thing. And so it ended up, I say my baseball career cost both Coach Cox and my dad a lot of money. My dad ended up following me all over the country playing and coaching baseball, and Coach Cox bought a bass boat. So
yeah. Those are all true.
Yeah.
True story there.
No, it was good. And anyway, so the one kind of message that Coach Cox sent home with me was, and my dad, to be quite honest, because at that time I didn't know, anything, but he sent me home with a tee and said, hit off of this every day. And there wasn't a day that went by from the time I was 11 years old to the time I was 19 that I didn't. And much of that, by the way, was by order of my father. And so between these two men, they had, quite a hand in my upbringing and kind of my beliefs about baseball and beliefs about life and these sorts of things. And anyway, went through the whole cycle of playing and got done with my 5th year of college in 2005 and kind of immediately decided I wanted to get into coaching. And I came back home, I think in 2007 from Louisiana, and jumped right on the DeSales boat in 2007. And then from there left DeSales and went over to the community college. I was always kind of drawn to the college game for a number of different reasons. Part of it, I think, is you get to do it for like 8 months of the year. And that felt more right than 3, so that was, and then, obviously like the skill levels different, the interest by players is different. There was all sorts of things that I found really attractive about coaching college kids. And then 2009, I guess it was the summer of 2009, they announced the Walla Walla Sweets were coming to town. And I got this out of the blue, no warning phone call from Jeff Cirillo, and he was one of the partners with the Sweets organization, and he invited me to interview for the job. And they were basically looking for a local guy who had time in the summer and could travel all over the Northwest and do the summer collegiate thing. And it happened at the time that Dave Melia at Walla Walla, he was kind of the first one who was offered that interview opportunity. And Dave just had a kid and he just got the job at Walla Walla, and it just wasn't a fit. And so, yeah, I landed the job and did that for 5 years and coached at the community college for, 10 years. And yeah. And so it was all of this stuff, but really what it comes down to is like coach has had kind of a hand in, everything that I've done. And I credit him with everything positive that's ever happened, in my baseball life anyway. Because he introduced, opportunity to me at a young age and, allowed me to hang on.
Coach, what kind of conversation is that with JC? I mean, I think about like our words are powerful, right? As coaches, we can be positive or we can negative. You think about the words that you spoke to JC that day changed his path. Absolutely. Got him dedicated to the game. Look, made him into the player he became and then the coach that he has become. But what's that conversation like? I mean, I just think a lot of coaches sometimes just like, just some young buck. I'll just put a ball on a tee and go home and hit, but what kind of conversation was that?
Well, I wanted to go fishing, remember?
Okay. So you're looking at
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Really, I don't know. I don't ever think about whether conversations are positive or whether conversations are negative. You know, I just want them to be truthful. And I think that any time when, you know, you're working with a guy that was as young as JC at the time, um, I mean, his dad had kind of explained to me that he'd kind of gone through some difficulty, you know, as a little league player, and so I just approached it as this, you know, playing baseball is hard, you know, and it takes work. And the best thing you can do is get good information first, and then get to work. And he was very diligent in the work ethic part, you know, and I knew he would be, and I also knew that John was going to make sure he did that, you know. You know, it's funny. You guys have heard this a million times, I'll bet you, because I have, and that is a dad saying, "Well, I didn't want to push him," you know. And every time I hear that, I say, "You got to be kidding me! You don't want to push him?" I said, "Think about what you just said there. I mean, there's nothing more negative than that comment in my mind. You know, kids at that age, they're not able to make good decisions for themselves. You know, they can't see down the road. No, I think you need to push them. It's okay to push them. You know, you just have to be fair. You have to be truthful to them. They'll do fine."
You know, it's kind of funny because as I think about that, I think about the conversation. There was nothing really significant outside of it was more of like a mechanical conversation.
Yep.
And then the work ethic side was interesting too, because my dad, and it wasn't just work, it was more the discipline to work, right? Because
Yeah.
in my baseball career as a player, like my the bright spot, if you will, wasn't in the batter's box. I ended up pitching, you know, more, I'd say more thoroughly in college, but it was more like, you know, he handed me a couple of tools and said, "Go home and work on this," you know. And my dad's background was such that, you know, at the time he was fishing, that took a lot of work. He was a bull rider though in college. And so this was like right down coach's alley, you know, as far as like what he wanted in a player. And I just wasn't cutting it, you know, but my dad was very unsympathetic toward, you know, any sort of you know, emotional hiccup I might have. And so he just kind of, I wouldn't even say he instilled anything that particular day outside of, "Hey, here are a couple tools, go home and use them." And my dad kind of used that from there forward to, I mean, it was literally every day, like, "Did you hit today? Did you hit today? Did you hit?" And I'm telling you, we went through winters. We went through winters. We had a carport, and we set up a tarp and in this tee, and you guys probably remember these tees. They were those like the one we had was kind of a homemade one, but it was like those 9 location tees, you know. And and coach had the makeshift like metal and rubber coming out of it, and it was like, I think there was maybe a couple times when my dad was like, "You know what? It's 0 degrees out, you know, maybe hit twice as much tomorrow." And he was more worried about me breaking the bat than he was my, you know, anything for my well-being. But yeah, it was kind of right up coach's alley as far as kind of that mentality, you know.
Yeah. He provided that really well.
You should preach it all the time with kids and at any age, right? Like good hitters hit, right? Like good hitters hit and they hit and they hit, right? And I think that there's a lot of distractions now. There's a lot of things to do. There's a lot of other stuff going on. It's not that you have to take 500,000, 2,000 hacks a day. You just got to do a little bit, right? You got to do a little bit. You got to like to do it. Building kinesthetic awareness, building awareness of how your body moves, the things you can do, the things you can't do, that adjustability that comes into it, right? Like if we just all hitting games all the time, right? Just live pitching, like you're going to fail a lot. Like it's hard enough already, right? And if you don't know what you're doing, you don't have a feel for your body, like that's the big challenge, right? And I think just having the discipline, like it doesn't mean you're going to be a big leaguer if you hit every day, right? But you're going to have feel for what you can and can't do. And you get in a game situation, you know what your strengths are, and you try to adapt and be able to be the best that you can, right? So that's awesome. I love it.
You know, it was funny, Kelly, today we had this, I come over to coaches on Monday and Wednesdays, and he has what would we call it? It's called baseball prep. And it's kind of just like it sounds. It's like a bunch of kids come in and they work for an hour and they go home, and coach gives them great information. They get a lot of reps and that sort of thing. And it's awesome. But I was thinking today, you know, just like you said, hitters hit. And I was thinking today about that very thing. You know, like when a kid wants to become like a good baseball player, it's like you spend so much time at it, and you do it with such enthusiasm. And sometimes the thing that coach did a really good job of is he provided a lot of enthusiasm for us in various ways, you know, and it was not in any sort of like rah, you know, motivational kind of, we didn't get speeches and things like that, but it was like there was a lot of energy behind everything that we did. And there were reps that took place, you know, that weren't occurring other places, you know, high intensity stuff. It was good.
No, I think that's so good, because that's, I mean, really it's how we should attack each day, right? As individuals,
No
you know,
doubt.
how do you wake up in the morning? You know, I ask, I'm a real big personal guy, right? And I like the simple questions. What inspires you? You know, what fires you up? You know, when you put your feet on the ground, what drives you? You know, and those are kind of things that I think some people just get in the routine and they just do it to do it, or they're being, you know, I don't know, they do the comparison thing. How much of a desire do they really want to be there? You know, and just go out and have fun and do your thing, but do it with a purpose. And that's the thing, is like, my kind of brag about my oldest daughter here is that she's really taken the liking of basketball as well as softball in her sport. And I told her, you know, the only way you're going to get better is you have to put the effort in. You know, so I really encourage my kids to say they got to take the initiative. On my side of it, you know, a parent should push a kid, right? But the kid's got to take the initiative and want that desire and want. And so, you know, I basically give her all the tools, you know, and then she goes out and she meets with the people that are training with her right now. She's got a gal that she wakes up 3 days a week meets at 6:45. They lift, they shoot for basketball. And then in the evenings, she's doing pitching lessons at, you know, 6 to 7, you know, so she's doing that twice a week. So that's all by her wanting to get better. Right. And that's what it is. Right. And
what do you guys I was going to ask you, Jason, because I've got young kids, and this is something that I can't quite pin in my own life, you know, like what's that handoff like? You know what I'm saying? Like you bring the game to them, and then somehow they take it. I can't relate to that.
And each of your kids going to be a little different.
No,
well,
yeah.
But I'm learning, like my youngest, she's into drama and theater and all that stuff. She's sports right now. Soccer's her thing. I'm not a soccer guy. I mean, the only soccer I'll watch is World Cup, right? I mean, that's about the only soccer I enjoy. But the thing is I know that that's her driving force. So the thing is even with my son, you know, he complains about his lack of performance. I'm like, well, how much effort do you put in at home? Not much. Well, there you go. We have a cage. We have it all set up. We got it. You know, he's got all the tooling. He's got everything there. You have to take that. I can get you there, but you know what to do. You can get the tee up. You got, you know, the machine. You can load the machine. It feeds for you. So you could do it, you know. And that's the thing, is like, I think that's where parents just go out and do it, right? And so they're saying, well, you're going to do this, play for this team, or maybe they're doing it with their buddies. I just present it and say, this is what you should do. You know, it's like saying, you know, if you're a good public speaker, JC, you know, like, okay, you need to be in public speaking or whatever it is. You're encouraging that individual to do more because you see the possibilities with them. So that it's a lot of conversations, and it's just being direct and assertive, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
I got a story about this one, and I'm so excited to tell us that, I'm in the early stages of what you guys are talking about with my kids. What are they going to be into? Are they even going to like sports in the way that I did things? Right. And it hit me the other day when we were watching a Central basketball game, and the next day they were out doing things with the basketball. And I got to thinking, like, okay, where did my love for baseball come from? And Coach Cox, I don't think I ever told you this one. But I mean, two amazing guys in the baseball world that I know is Kim Cox and Merle Watkins, right? And watching Coach in DeSales all those years at Yakima, and then playing for Merle and being a really good friend of his. And when it was 95, right? Kittitas played DeSales in the state championship game. That was my first baseball memory. And that's where, like, that day I was like, oh man, like, this game's awesome. This is the cool. Like, and from then on, I went to Yakima Bears games that summer, so on and so forth. And then I got thinking there, and I was like, I wonder if that's it. Is it presenting them with, and maybe that's the key to it? I don't know. I'm really curious. I'll find out in probably 12 years, at least. So I don't know. We'll see. But I'm curious to see if is that what it is to make sure that, or not to make sure, but to give them, see if their interest rub off on each other, right?
Yeah, I definitely
They're
think
good,
that, like,
yeah.
just exposing to as many things as possible and see what clicks is what works best. You know, my dad wasn't a baseball player. Like, his dad didn't push him to, you know, be anything or not. We got Cat shout out, you know,
Yeah, get the cats back.
undefeated,
He's our mascot.
undefeated every episode he's on. You know, but like, we went to Mariners games and we did stuff, and you know, his dad was the grinder type that, you know, worked the 8 jobs and, you know, provided for the big family and allowed things to work out. And so didn't really have that time. And, you know, and I think for me personally, like, I was the one that took the initiative to say, hey, let's go play catch. Hey, throw it higher. Hey, let's go do this. Let's go do that. Right. I wanted it. Right. Like, it's not that I wanted to, you know, necessarily take a billion swings or do all this and that all the time, but like, I wanted to play baseball. I wanted to do those things. Like, it was
Right.
fun to me. Right. And then you get older, and I remember calling up the buddies, you know, to say, like, hey, let's go over to the school. Who can you get? Who can you get? Come over. Let's go play. Right. And maybe we're playing 3-on-3 baseball, or we're playing, maybe you get a full team that day. Right. But like, we just wanted to go play. Like, we just enjoyed doing it. It wasn't because someone was force feeding us that, like, you have to do this many swings, or you have to do this, you have to do that. Like, we just did it because we'd enjoyed it. Right. And no one ever forced me to do anything. And I think that's where my passion is, right? Is that, and I don't know if you guys are the same way, but I chose to do everything that I did in baseball. I was never forced to have to play baseball. And my dad will make comments now and then that he wished that I would have done the select thing earlier, or done stuff like that. But, you know, I tell him I might not still be enjoying baseball if I came across the wrong people that didn't take it the right way, that were in it for the wrong reasons. Right. And so I think we can all relate to that. Is just that fact that, like, we chose to do this. Like, no one truly forced us. Like, yeah, they might have been tough on us. Like, your dad's obviously get on you for things and this and that. Right. But there's obvious initiative on the player's end to want to go do this, to want to get better. Otherwise, like, it's no fun for anyone if you're forcing it, right?
Yeah, and I think, Coach, you kind of talked about this a little bit before we got on air, but like, the effort of practice, right? Enjoying. I know for us, for our summer program, we put a lot of practices within our summer games, and we see so much more enjoyment in our practices. Not that games we're enjoying, you know, it's just showcasing to the parents and the fans what the result of practice is. But like, how much enjoyment, like, people don't take that enjoyment out of the practice. You know, like JC, you're talking about the tee and the tarp. I mean, that's enjoyment. Those times, you know, you're just, I can see the expression of joy. I mean, really, I mean, honestly, like, those are great stories, but like, the practice effort. I mean, where's our joy in practice nowadays? You know,
if I could just kind of, I have a theory on all of this stuff too that we can get into, but the joy that I see is all in hindsight. It wasn't something that I was like super thrilled with in 10-degree weather hitting off of a tee into a tarp, right?
Just good stories, right?
Yeah, no, it is, and it grew me in a certain way, you know. But I feel like a lot of things that are really, let's call them, let's say, fun, just for lack of vocabulary on my part, in baseball, are looking back. They're what was. It could have been a moment ago, by the way, right? It could be a big punch out. It's not necessarily when you're in the set position with the bases loaded and a 3-2 count, right? It's like you're not thinking, oh, this is just like Disneyland, right?
It's so fun.
You know, good for you if you are, you know, like you're at the top of the Ferris wheel at that moment, you know, so exhilarating. No, I mean, it's after the punch out, you know, it's like, we're done. You know, it's the fist pump you see on TV, you know, it's like that. Those are, I 100% agree. But so often in baseball, like you get that punch out in that 3-2 situation, right? And you give the fist pump and it's like, next thing up, what's next, you know, and the time turns so fast, and it's like the next moment, the next opportunity. You can't spend too much time soaking in that one because we got something else ahead, right? So yeah, I think a lot of things in baseball that are fun are always, you're like looking back on, you know, like what was.
What do you got on that, Coach?
Oh, I was just enjoying listening to all of that, because that's really true. I remember waking up in the morning, and me and my friends, we go down to the field and play over the line for hours, you know, just out of the infield for hours, go home for lunch, take a few hours off, and then go play some more. I mean, yeah, we played that game all the time. And that was a really good game for us to play, you know, back then.
You know, it's funny you bring that up, because just yesterday, my oldest daughter, so she's in 8th grade, she asked me, she goes, Dad, what did you guys do as kids? I mean, like, because nowadays you don't really have a lot of neighbor, like where we live, we don't have a lot of neighboring young kids. And so they don't run across there. It's all their friends, and they have to coordinate, and mom takes them to their house or they go wherever. And so I said, well, you know, we had you know, I had buddies around that in the neighborhood, and we get together and we play the game of pickle. Really? What, you know, you mean like the game, like baseball pickle? I'm like, yeah, we used to take a cup. My dad had a couple of 5-gallon bucket lids, and one would go on one end and one would go on the other end. And we had these mats, and man, we'd play that for 3 or 4 hours, you know, just going on. And we just, you know, the sliding and the outs, and you'd have one playing the umpire. And we would be throwing that. I remember we would go maybe 3-4 hours, and I would go into my arm. I couldn't even lift my arm. And that's just what we did. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, in the sense of like, you're wanting to get better, you know, you're throwing, you're working on your mechanics, you're working on your footwork. But like, how many kids go out to a park or in the front yard of their house, you see them playing pickle? I mean, you might see some of it, but those are, you know, talking about.
Yeah, we used to play that all the time too. Hot boxed.
Hot box.
Hot box. There you go. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So,
you know, even like at DeSales, we used to, like sometimes when you got this turnout of 20, 23, 24 guys, so you got just enough that you can kind of have a JV. So you have your 12 varsity guys, and then you got your JV team, you know. So we used to do this thing called cutthroat, kind of like pool. So you got 3 people, so you had 3 teams playing against each other. So 3 teams of 4, and then we let it be competitive, because whoever lost was going to get some PT, you know, some personal training that was going to be not fun to do. And so the games were, I just really enjoyed them. There's a lot of swearing, you know, because guys were just getting after each other, you know, during the game. They didn't want to do the PT, but I really liked those days.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think our players really did too.
Did you?
Yeah. No, we had that is the thing that I guess, like for my part, you know, Coach mentioned this. You guys were, you know, at that coach's clinic, and he talked about his relationship with Ed Chef and kind of the inspiration that come from that program. And so life at DeSales was, I would guess, a lot different than a lot of other places, just because of the level of intensity that existed in everything that we did. And it wasn't by, you know, people will say things like, oh, we make it competitive. And I would say more like they made it really stressful. And, the competition comes out of that stress because, it's really hard to replicate the sweaty palms, the crappy breathing, the heart rate, except when you put something on the line that's so important to not have happen to you, like running, 10 poles, or as we could call, if I can say this on air, the bullshit drill. Okay. And that was something that was probably unique to our program, at least within our league, I'd say. But, coach drew a lot of our program kind of out of the LC way of doing things. And it was just a super, super intense place. And sometimes that intensity would just be the voice of Coach Cox. It was, he's climbing down your back, over, some skill that he thought, but by now you should have attained, or something that you haven't executed today that you should have executed. And so less on the like, oh yeah, we put the score, we turned the scoreboard on, and it was more like if the scoreboard, if you're on the low end of that scoreboard, we're gonna have problems today. And that was what we did. So yeah, it was fun. So that made it fun in hindsight. Like if you said we're gonna go do that like tomorrow morning, I'd be out. But yeah. That was good.
Coach, was
He's
that a
probably
lot?
explain what bullshits were. I didn't even know that the players invented that word, and it usually had to do with, like when you're trying to get something done, and you're like hitting some fungos or something. Maybe you're just turning double plays or whatever, and you hit like about 3 fungos to the second baseman. And we haven't been able to turn a double play because he hasn't come up with the ball yet. So about the third one of those, I'm going to be pretty furious by then. And so a lot of times it was, I just go, that's so bullshit, and start walking towards the right field line.
He took his. Let me interject. He take that metal fungo. He take the metal fungo and he just point, and everybody just sprint over to the right field line. Go ahead, Coach.
Yeah, guys are running over to the right field line, and then you go. They start running, and you go hit it, and they had to head slide, and then get up and keep running. So you'd be going hit it, and then you gather them, and you go back the other direction. And the whole time it'd be stuff like, oh, this is much more fun than doing what we're supposed to do, right? you guys love this. I love this too. Let's do this for like 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden head back to the field. And man, it was a lot better. There's always a lot better. And if it wasn't, we go back and do some more. And so at least we were getting in good shape.
Yeah,
we weren't accomplishing much.
But it was like the third time, you come back from the line after something like that. And sometimes it wasn't like one, it was like down, it was like from the right field line to center field and back. And yeah, we're getting what's the word? Like he's
yeah, we have to do it at least 2 or 3 of them,
And then you get back and you gotta go turn a double play after that. Like you gotta with polish. It's gotta be really good. And it ultimately would get good. And you're stressed the whole time because who wants to do that? Like we came out to play baseball, not to do track. And you guys want to do track.
Pretty soon I start hearing this term about something that we're doing at practice called bullshits, and I'm going, what are you talking about? We don't have something called bullshits.
Well, if you were in front of an administrator, we call it the BS drill.
Oh, BS drill. I had no idea they were calling them. They had a name for it.
Was that something you came up with, JC? Or is that one?
No. This is
Oh,
way
okay.
before me. I mean, there was
Okay.
years of bullshits before I arrived.
So it carried over. It was
Yeah.
just like everybody knew.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you knew when you were going to the right field line. Like I was probably in 7th grade by the time I knew what bullshits were in 7th grade. And now that probably was
I might
something-
not have, but he did.
Yeah. That was actually something if I could plug that one, like, that's something that was unique that Coach did too. So one of my first experiences around DeSales baseball, other than obviously like when I was 11, as I described, were at baseball camps. And Coach would put on these camps, and it was like, if somebody's like building a high school program today, and you have access to the young people within that arc, that community that's coming up, man, those guys led by Coach really just took advantage of that. We had Assumption grade school, and people used to, it's funny, people used to accuse DeSales of recruiting through all of those years. And that wasn't like an uncommon thing, but really what it was it was so attractive to so many people that it was like I came over, I was there in kindergarten, and then I ended up, we couldn't afford it for a period of time, came back in the 6th grade, but it was such an attraction in the community, going to DeSales. And in large part, I think because of kind of the program, and the program wasn't isolated to 9th through 12th grade kids. The program was something that we did the same. You mentioned zones, like pitching to zones at the clinic. Like we threw to zones in the 7th and 8th grade. We had the same sign system in the 7th and 8th grade in middle school that the high school had. We did all the same, drill stuff, cage stuff at camps when we were 11 years old, 12 years old, 13 years old. So by the time you got to the 8th grade, you were pretty well dialed in as far as what's coming next year. And everybody knew that, and it was either like, you're in or out, like you were going to be a DeSales baseball player and kind of inherit, that title and carry on the torch, or, you're going to go run track. So, and sometimes we did both, obviously, but, yeah, I think that was something that was really unique about, DeSales, especially in that era, the program was much, much bigger, parents were bought in, and, yeah.
No, I think that's something to say within a small community, and that establishing it. And Coach, where does that kind of start in your coaching career? Was that your first opportunity coaching with your brother, where you started thinking, if I'm going to do this, I'm really going to have to figure out some, what's my, I guess, identity, or who I'm going to role model after, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think just like what I mentioned at the clinic is when I became the head coach in 1983, I thought that my excitement and my enthusiasm, to get going was going to be enough, kind of, in a way. I thought, well, I think I know enough, and I'm just really excited. Let's go. And man, oh man, was that an eye opener? I mean, because I think the first game, you find out that, holy smokes, that didn't go the way I thought. That's not supposed to be the way it is. And so clearly I didn't know enough. And your excitement and enthusiasm doesn't amount to shit, really. I think in those situations. But like as JC alluded to, but good habits, good skills, or as Kelly mentioned, just having a kinesthetic understanding of movement and what you need to do as a player. Those are things that matter. And so I had to get, I was fortunate actually, and I kind of knew a little bit just because of Bobby, and I learned like the Cougar way to do a lot of things, and there was nothing wrong with that, but I really wanted to talk to the guy who was handing the Cougars some painful painful experiences on a regular basis, you know, and just to me, the LC guys were just different. They're just different. I mean, that you can clearly see that you wouldn't want to get in a fight with them. You know, they were just a different kind of character, and they got that, I know, from Coach Chef. And so, I mean, I said at the clinic, you know, be willing to call anyone. You know, I called him, and I didn't know what I was going to get. I mean, you watch Ed Chef coaching a game, you probably think, well, why the hell would I call that guy? You know what's going to happen? I mean, he might just hang up on me. I don't know, but man, I mean, Ed's was I think he's like a kind of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of character. I mean, he was really, really enjoyable to be around. Really enjoyable. Very, very open to be a mentor, you know, to me. And but we could be in his office, you know, having a good conversation and maybe laughing about something, walk out of the office and open the gate there in right field and step on the field, and man, everything changed. You know, as soon as the foot hit the ground,
Wow.
there's a loud voice. He's yelling something. And I'm just going, what the hell happened? You know, and he just saw something, you know, that set him off, and he was setting the tones. All he was doing was setting the tone to get to work. You know, and so I observed that a lot, and so we kind of had the same kind of deal. You know, things are supposed to be done a certain way. I mean, when we got out of school, yeah, you guys are, you know, this group, you're setting up the pitching machines, and you know, you're doing this, you got that, and if that wasn't being done fast, then it wasn't going to be fun for a minute or two. we were going to go to the right field or something, you know, or you know, we're just going to yell for a while until the speed picked up a little bit. And so I mean, I saw stuff like that happen with Coach Chef a lot. I remember one night I went to watch a game there, and they were losing to it was Albertsons at the time, so they're losing to him with a couple of by 4 runs with 2 outs in the ninth, in the bottom of the ninth. They come back and they tie the game, and then they win the game. Well, I'm thinking, well, God, Coach Chef's he should be really pleased with that. So I kind of walk down by the dugout. He sees me and goes, he's kind of, hey, come on, just come on down. So I go down on the field, and I'm thinking, well, this could kind of be an interesting conversation. He starts out saying, you got beep, 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 cussed out last night, and you're going to get beep, 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 cussed out again tonight. And he just let him have it, because in his mind, it should have never been behind by 4 runs. That's what he was pissed about. He was upset about stuff that had happened up to that point. All I saw was the good stuff, you know, at the end. I didn't even see the stuff that happened before that. You know, I drove up just to kind of guess the end of the game, and then, you know, spend some time talking to him about some stuff. So I didn't see all the bad stuff. I saw the good stuff. But we didn't. there was no conversation whatsoever about the good stuff. You know, I remember one time we were playing over at Liberty Christian, and Rob Holsinger had a friend of his that had come to see him, and so he pulls up, and the game had just got over. We got our guys out in left field, and I'm running them pretty good because of some stuff that had happened, you know, during the game. And so Rob's friend, he walks up and starts talking to him, says, sees those guys out running. He goes, Holtz, I'm sorry you guys lost. And Rob goes, oh, we didn't lose. We won 11-3. The kid's kind of looking at Rob like, what's wrong with you guys? He goes, oh, that. He goes, oh, there was some stuff that wasn't very good. So we're trying to address that. But that's what happened there. That's the way it was in in Lewiston. I know, except for way worse.
I have to ask you, like, as long as you've been doing it, you know, you mentioned those old days and observing that, and can you do it the same now? Like, can you do the same things that you once did with kids?
That's a
You know,
great
as far as
question,
discipline.
Kelly.
Yeah, let us know. Let us have
It
it.
really
'Cause,
is. Oh,
the
well,
old
I
timers are
think,
great.
yeah, honestly, I think it totally has to do with, what your administrators like, totally. Because, not all those guys are just pansy soft. Some of them aren't, you know. And like I had an administrator at DeSales for a while. He played football at Missouri, you know. And so I remember asking him one time, he actually after he worked there at DeSales, and then he went down to Bishop Kelly, which is a large Catholic school in Boise, and he was the principal there. And I was down to my brother lives in Boise, owns a car lot there, and I was down there, and so I said, grab Rick, and I go, hey, let's go get Bob Wade and go watch the Boise Hawks play. And so we're sitting at table there in the third base patio and having some beer and some food and just talking. So I asked Bob, I go, hey, did you ever get any phone calls about me? And Bob, he just starts to laugh. He goes, oh yeah, I got some. So I look at my brother and I go, I never heard about a single one of them. And he said, oh hell, Kim, I know what you were trying to do. He goes, I know you love those kids. He said, I get a phone call sometimes and I'd say, oh, he said what? He said that? Oh, he did? Okay. Well, I appreciate you calling me. And when I hang up, I'm going to take care of it. And so he'd hang up and he took care of it. I never heard a thing. Because in his mind, there wasn't anything there that was horrible in his mind. Okay. Other people's mind, I always, say that I worked there for 40 years, and the first 20 were just absolutely joyful. And I worked for Sister Mary McGreevy. She asked me one time, what kind of words do you say out there? And I go, well, sisters, I've said, a few of them that probably aren't great, but my favorite one is bullshit. I said that, and she smiles. She goes, that's a good one. So, I mean, she was great. I mean, Jim Chubb, man, just a fantastic, principal administrator. He'd go to games and kids would win something and he'd cry. He'd cry just because he was so happy for the kids, Bob Wade, Frank McGowan, they were all fantastic. The last 20 years, not so much. And that was just one guy. But even him, and he didn't really say much to me, really. So I don't know, that's a really good question. I mean, to me, if you got a situation where you can't be emotional sometimes, then that would be a place I wouldn't apply for.
That's an interesting deal too, because it's like, well, what is it that you would what is it that you would have him not do, or what and not to press you, Kelly, on the question, but there's a lot that goes into that, right? It's like swearing, well, that probably depend a lot on, not that was like a key element to the program, right? But it's like it happens. But you see that in colleges too. I mean, then you have kind of the, I heard somebody ask Nick Saban from the media, you're really hard on your players, and he was like, no, I wouldn't characterize it that way. We just hold them to a really high standard, and we just do it consistently.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we had going on.
I think so too.
And I think that was the case at LC too. I mean, Ed was just a different type of type of guy doing it.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I knew a couple guys that played for Ed, and one thing I think a lot of people, they see it from the stands. One, his intensity, his love, his desire to win, but also, guys that played him loved for him, and I'm like, man, what's so great about Coach Chef? I remember one time we were getting ready for, we're doing pregame on their field. They're doing PFPs out in left field, and one of their pitchers comes up, and they hit the ball and he misses it. And so get in there, hits it a little bit harder. He misses again. By the third one, it's a rocket right back at him. I'm like, holy cow. And the guy catches it. And there's nothing else said. Okay, next guy up. There's just that expectation. Get the job done, move on. But, guys who said they played for him, they said, man, he would be such a personable coach. I mean, you come up, how's school? How are you doing? How's family life? Those kind of, he really did care for his players. And, coach, like you're talking about, it's all about your team. What they knew, what your intentions were. And I think that's where people get it wrong. They see one way, but they don't understand the intentions and the people that you were working with and for. They knew your intentions, so, a foul language, whatever statement of some sort, it's not intention to destroy the kid, I mean,
right.
Yeah. Right. I used to say, do you guys have any idea what those kids are listening to driving in the parking lot in the morning?
Yeah.
Good Lord, you're gonna talk to me about this word?
I got to tell you guys. So Coach mentioned this at the clinic, but it's so worth mentioning. I'll never forget. He told the story about singing at practice, and he might remember it a little bit different. But I was on that team, and I'll never forget. Like we always had mass on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. and we'd kind of like you'd have the football guys kind of, and it'd be like we had it in the gym, and it was kind of in the back corner. We'd all just kind of hang out and kind of go through the motions. And the math teacher at DeSales, like he was the math teacher, Mr. Lapke, would do the music. And then he always had a couple volunteer kids, to do the music. Anyway, we're all just, sitting in the back of the church or sitting in the back of the gym. We're not participating, not singing. And I'll never forget going into the locker room, and Coach Cox, like, you walk through the gym, back corner of the gym, take a left, and he goes, whoa, where are you guys going? Just get our pads, and he goes, no. You stay right here. And Mr. Lapke's there. And we're like, what in the heck is going on? Like, what is Mr. Lapke doing? And then we start like talking about like, what are we doing? And coach is just kind of stopping everybody. And then we're stopping guys. They're supposed to meet out in the gym, And then he's like, pull out the bleachers. And we're like, what? Pull out the bleachers. And then he's like, grab a hymnal. We're like, what in the hell are we doing? And we went through every song that we sang at mass that day. And like hymn by hymn by hymn. And, there's like 4 or 5 hymns. And, he made us like, it wasn't just we sang him. It was like, when we get good at this, we'll go outside. And that was that. It was so important, it was like, and then we did, and we had a kind of a like truncated football practice because we had to spend time, doing what we missed earlier in the day. And people don't see that stuff, like, it's like, can you do that today? You know what I mean? Another example of something that was completely unique, because I would have been like, I think a sophomore. And in fact, we had 2 seniors get kicked off the team, like game 2. And it was the pitcher and the catcher. And anyway, so we got smoked. Kid comes he had to throw the game that, he had no business pitching. We got beat by Meade like 18-1. It was brutal. And the kid comes into this little sidebar. Kid comes in the dugout, and he's like, guys, you got to make a play, And coach goes, you know what? They'd probably make plays if the ball wasn't being hit 200 miles an hour by them. So we get boat raced, we kind of had a couple hiccups, and it was like we hit our entire non-league schedule was like 4A opponents, and we played Meade, Mount Spokane, Pendleton, Hermiston, Southridge. And we didn't fare very well, as you might imagine, because we're missing like two really important guys. And I'll never forget, because being a sophomore, you end up kind of bearing a little bit of the, you shoulder the missing piece, and I lost like 3 straight games on the mound. And I think I lost like 5 games my whole career and 3 in a row in my sophomore year. And I remember sitting in the library one day, and of course, you're thinking we have these really high expectations in our program, and it's like, what happened? It doesn't matter. We don't make excuses, it wasn't acceptable, etc. And I was just really down, because this is like my thing. And, you're letting your program down, and he comes in and kind of pats me on the back. You doing okay? And I'm like, not really. I don't know. Am I? And he's like, you hang in there. You'll be all right. It's going to be okay. This is just baseball. I was like, just baseball? It reminded me of that Augie Garrido. It's our life,
Yeah.
But there was that. And then at the end of the season, kind of tore. In fact, it was in the playoffs. Coach kind of had, he wasn't a speech guy, but he was like, hey, it's kind of been an up and down deal. And I want you guys to know that I love you and I care about you, and I'm proud of what you've done this year. And we're like week of playoffs, and he's like, I want everybody to get in their car and follow me. We're like, freaking, it's practice time, like we play in 3 days. I don't know if it's districts or regionals or what. We went over to the cemetery, and the field at DeSales is named after a guy named Ray Lane, who died in the early 80s. Coach,
late 80s.
Late 80s. And anyway, we went to his gravesite, and we talked about, a kid that didn't have opportunities to play because he was sick with cancer. And this is where life is at. This is where it concludes for all of us right here. And that was like our playoff message, like, let's go into this thing and do it right. And we end up, winning the state championship that year too. But that was, people don't read those stories, and that was what I remember. I couldn't tell you a single score from any championship game in football or baseball. We won 6 of them, and I can tell you that. And that was probably the most impactful thing. And we ended up doing that, and the rest of my high school career. And I knew, I know well beyond. And of course, there's always kids that have had 2, more recent deaths, that got included in that, from former students, former athletes, right? So
yeah. Probably swore at the cemetery too.
Oh man,
I remember when I was I coached a little football for Steve Graff when he was at Pasco, and the athletic director there was a gal named Lee Burns. So the first day of practice, I walked down into Edgar Brown, from the backside, and Lee's there, and she goes, "You Kim?" And I go, "Yeah." She goes, "I'm Lee." So shake hands, and she goes, "Really, Kim, I just have some real simple requests. Don't use the F word, don't say GD, and don't say the JC." And then she turns around, she looks over towards the locker room, and all the coaches are sitting over there on the bench. Turns back to me, she goes, "And if you can master 2 out of those 3, you'll be better than those guys." Oh man. She's quite a gal. She'd come in at halftime, and you know what? True to her word, there was all kinds of stuff said during halftime, but no Fs, no GDs, no JCs. But holy smokes, everything else is sure fair game. And I used to just hear some of the things that Dave Spray would say, and I just go, "What?" Yeah, and people are worried
So,
about
so out of those three, what
swearing.
was your one though? What was your
No,
go-to out of those three? What'd you pick? What'd you pick?
I didn't, you know what? I didn't really, it's different there, especially when you're an assistant. I mean, to me, I know how to be an assistant and I know how to be a head coach too.
Mhm.
And I think they're just a lot different. Being a head coach or an assistant coach is way more fun.
Absolutely.
No,
That's right.
you just got a little group of guys like they're me and Steve Davis coached receivers. That was it. And then I went up to the press box during games, and so worked on the offensive side of things. And that's just all it is. It's simple. I remember one time though, I went down on the field. It was towards the end of a game, and I really liked Lee Burns, and there was a kid who was running off the field, and he yells out loud, really loud, JC. Walks over and he's mad about something. So anyway, I see Lee Burns walking towards him. So I think, I'm gonna listen to this. I'm gonna see how she's gonna handle this. So I walk over, I kind of stand behind him a little bit. She walks up to this kid and she goes, "What number is he?" And the kid turns and looks at her, "What?" She goes, "What number is he?" He goes, "Who?" She goes, "Jesus Christ." She goes, I mean, I know we're all on the same team, but what number is he? I thought, holy smoke, is that ever good? I mean, that's someone who really understands human nature,
Mm-hmm.
and she let him have it. It was pretty good. I pat her on the back. I go, that was special. That was really good. No, she's a good gal.
Oh man. Well, as we get kind of closer to closing out here for the night, guys, each of you tell me one of the best stories. JC, we'll start with you, but playing for Coach Cox, and I know you had your brothers play for him as well and your family, but what is the best story you could share to all our listeners tonight? Baseball.
I don't know. There's so many, right? Because I think a lot of the stories that are that come through the game or through the characters of the game. That's one of the things that I most enjoy, I think, about baseball. And I'm not near involved today as I was. I help Coach Cox. That was by chance. I have this little boy who's 5, and he happened to find a little mini bat that I got from City Field. And he come out of my closet, and he picks this little thing up when he's like 2 years old, and he starts swinging it. And then, on down the line where he's 5 years old, and he wanted to go hit, and so that's kind of how I ended up back, helping Coach with his stuff now. But in my time coaching, I think one of the things that comes to mind, this was actually a really funny deal. So we were talking about Ed Sheff earlier. I played for a guy who was a longtime assistant at LC State named Chad Miltonberger. And, you talk to guys in the Northwest who've been around the game a little bit, and Chad's synonymous with LC State. And you look back in the record books, and he was one of the, I would never call him like Ed Sheff Jr. because he's a completely different animal. He's his own man, but he is just super, super tough. And so in my career, I start off with Coach Cox. I've got my dad at home, and then naturally, go play for Milt. When I was coming out of high school, I had the option of going to Walla Walla, Columbia Basin, or Lewis Clark State. And Milt was like, "What do you think is going to happen at LC?" And that's kind of how he talked to us. And you're gonna go up there. I was there for 15 years. You're gonna go up there. You're gonna get a little bit of playing time. You're just not gonna get enough of it. And what do you think? What do you think Walla Walla is gonna look like? It's the same program. you're just going to play a lot more. So I ended up going to Walla Walla. But anyway, the story goes, we were doing these, we were doing bunt rotation. So LC State, and we just ran everything that LC ran, So LC, they, in their bunt rotations, they had a 1 and a 2, and each of them had a phase. And so we ran the same bunt rotation. So you had phase 1 of a 1 and phase 1 of a 2 and phase 2 of a 2, and etc. And phase 1 was always a pick. So if you guys ever played LC, like in a bunt rotation, bunt situation, guys on first and second, there's always a pick at second base. And then pitch after. You could do open hand, open glove, etc. So on the mound, we've got the pitchers. We've got the pitchers throwing kind of dummy fastballs into outfielders who are bunting, and then the infielders working the rotation with the pitcher. Well, if you guys ever pitched, it's like throwing 40% as a pitcher, 60 feet, 6 inches is like, that's like the hardest thing in the world to do. Like slow it down, right? It's like you gear it up. It's like you throw strikes, but you pull it back to 40%. It's like, it's so hard. There's nothing worse you can ask a pitcher to do than throw, So guys are getting hit. Balls are kind of going all over the place. Strikes aren't being thrown. Outfielders are bunting, trying to bunt things, give a gift, And Milt's kind of getting pissed. And so we'd already started with a he would just say go. And so we didn't run bullshits. We ran center field and back. Sidebar on that. So we had a center fielder named Niger Morgan. You're wearing a Pittsburgh hat. So Niger went up. He played in the big leagues for a number of teams, started off with the Pirates, but he was our center fielder. And Milt goes, go. And Niger ran to center field and back to his position. And so he comes unglued, because he ran 30 steps, right? And the catcher's got to run all the way to center field too. And so he comes unglued. When I tell you go, you run to home plate and back, And so Niger, all the outfielders run into home plate, and then everybody else run out the outfield. So it's not going good. And long and short, a guy named Steve Schutte, he was a Nampa, Idaho product, turns around to pick in a first phase of a 1 and hits a guy named Travis McCauley right in the spine at second base. And the outfielders are kind of running like they're kind of playing dummy runner, Anyway, fires this ball to second base on this pick and missed by 10 feet and hits Travis right in the spine, and Travis just drops. And so Milt goes, pitchers start fucking running now, go. And so they start running sprints around the field on the warning track. And he goes, get that blanket machine out here. And so we had this ATEC machine. All right. Oof. And you guys have hit ATEC machines, I'm sure. It's like the worst thing in the world. And we put baseballs through them. And so me and Seth McCauley, another guy, he was a catcher. He ended up going to LC State. We go into the facility or into the Connex thing, grab the machine, run it out to the mound, set it up, 2 seconds flat. We've got this thing plugged in and ready to go. Well, the pitchers are like on their 4th sprint, and he puts a ball through, and the ball goes halfway up the backstop. And this thing was normally like you could set it. It's going to be somewhere in the vicinity, minor adjustment. We're game on. Puts another one through. Poof. Halfway up the backstop. So he's starting to frickin', you can see the steam coming out of his ears. He's like 5'6", 240, by the way. Okay. He's just this little bulldog. And so he gets in front of the machine and he goes, boom, 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 boom. And he starts hitting the wheels. He turned the wheels off. And then he takes his fist and he shoves it in between the wheels of the ATEC and stops it like right now. And everybody's standing around going, holy smokes. Like he just stopped this machine in 10 seconds. And we're just like, couldn't believe it. You'd rub a baseball on it to stop it after it slowed down. It's like a minute later, right? He stuck his fist
and that's
in
risky.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it might ricochet off and hit you in the lip or something, And Milt stuck his fist in this machine and stopped it. And we were just all standing around because what do you do, So anyway, he's like, everybody at home plate, and we're just like frickin' sprint to home plate. You know, what's he gonna do to us? And all I can remember is he had that. I mentioned the Hoosier Fungo. That's what inspired my Hoosier Fungo originally. He starts his lecture with, when you bunt, and he holds up a bat and there's blood pouring off of his arms onto home plate. And that's all I remember. And the rest of the practice, we didn't miss a bunt. It was like guys are bunting with their nose behind the barrel, you know. It was like, we're not going to go through that again.
Oh man.
Yeah, and that was
Wow.
that was my junior college coach. So yeah, it was kind of
Wow.
wild time, but yeah.
Oh
They
man.
don't make them like
Ed Chef
that
told me
anymore.
that he was the best player he ever had.
Yep. He came out. So another time, Milk came out to practice one time. He was probably in his early 40s when he got the job at Walla Walla, I would say, early mid 40s. And of course, like I said, he had been at LC as an assistant for 15 years. And me and a guy named Andre Marshall. Andre ended up playing, I think, center field at UW. You know, that would have been late 90s, early 2000s. And Andre and I would hit every day during the summer, and we'd hit on the field occasionally. And this particular day we were. And Milk comes out, and he always wore Wranglers boots and not a flannel, but like a cowboy shirt. And he comes out, and it's 3 PM, and he goes, I had this Rawlings. I've never seen it since. It was a Rawlings DD26, and it had this like super thin like handle, like a 271, but it had this like straight taper barrel. And it was like 2 5/8 at the top. It was just this really like whippy. So Milk comes over and he grabs this bat off the ground. He goes, he's kind of whipping it around. He goes, throw me a couple. And I'm like, seriously? Well, the first pitch I throw him, I hit him in the shoulder. And I'm like, frick, you know? And he goes, like kind of like directed it down to the ground. And then he just kind of stares in. But he held his hands really low, and he rips a couple balls through the 6th hole. Again, this guy's 45 years old, way overweight, smokes a couple balls through. He's left-handed through the 6th hole, like just little rifle shots. And I throw one down the middle. He hits it over the 375 sign, and he flips the bat and walks off. And that was Milt. That was the same guy that beat up the machine. But yeah,
Oh man.
it was
That's
wild.
a good one.
Yeah.
That's cool. Coach, what do you got?
Well, I'm going to just say something about JC. So I mentioned at the clinic that he had gone down to the Centenary University, the smallest D1 school in the country at the time, and then pitched against LSU and beat them. And it was the only time that the Centenary had beaten LSU since like 1956.
Wow.
So JC probably should have ran for mayor of Shreveport. Probably would have won. And I remember him telling me that he didn't have to pick up a rake for a while.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably fair. And then another one I remember is I think when he was a freshman, we were playing in a state championship game in Spokane, I think it was, and so we were throwing Brian Lindgren, who was a pretty talented athlete that we had there, fortunate to have. That was a good quarterback, played at Idaho, and then now he was a OC for Jonathan Smith at Oregon State, and then followed him to Michigan State. So that's where he is now, as the OC there. But he was, for whatever reason, was just kind of, not hitting zones. And like, as I mentioned in the clinic, one of the really good things about always pitching to a zone is, when a guy is starting to lose it way early. And so he doesn't stay in there too long and set you up for a bad inning by you hanging with him and hoping that it's going to get better. I mean, when a guy's, supposed to hit the 3 zone and it's the 1 up and in, then that he's tired, or his legs are gone, or he's mentally not tough enough, or whatever that might be at that time. But so the guy that was coaching our pitchers at the time is a guy named Tim Duncan, and it's a guy I had a lot of confidence in. I would pretty much let let my assistant coaches, hey, you're the infield guy, you're the pitching guy, you coach them, And so Tim had a lot of say as far as, and he, what we were going to do. And he turns to me and he goes, I think we need to get him out. And I said, okay. I said, well, you thinking JC? And he goes, yeah, let's go get JC. And so JC's a young guy and comes out of the bullpen and gets to the mound, and I hold out the ball and he looks at me in the eye and he says, thank you for the opportunity. How many freshmen would run to the mound and just and make that statement, But I think that was because of some of the things that he'd mentioned, previously about, he knew long before he was in that program that was something that he wanted to do at some point. And so I think that those are, two stories about him that I think, speak really well of the kind of person that he is.
Man, that's awesome. I think that's a perfect way to end this episode with that story, because I know we've gone an hour and 16 minutes, and this thing could go probably all night if we had the right beverages and everything. So
yeah, right.
Man, coaches, Kim, JC, thank you guys so much for taking taking time tonight.
Thank you guys.
Come on with
thank
us.
you guys.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
This beats fungos in 36 degrees. I can tell you that.
Hey, blessings to you guys.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
too,
Blessings
Coach.
to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. We'll be right back to wrap up this episode.